Hey there everybody, it's Wayne D. Welcome to the website. It's WayneD.com. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and maybe go over and check out the website. So today we're going to be looking at the swing of probably the third hottest golfer on the planet after Rahm and McIlroy. It's Max Homa. And watching this golf swing, it's no wonder how good that guy's been playing for the last couple of years. How about this shot? So here's a really nice angle on a driver swing. So let's take there's a lot of interesting things to talk about from both sides, face on and down the line. So let's take a look at the face on. It's going to start a little bit while the screen lights up, but one of the things that's really nice about this is the grip. It's got a neutral grip. I like the way the left wrist is in extension. So he's probably got it down close to the bottom of his fingers. The right hand grip not too strong, but not too weak, just about right. So we gotta like that. Stance is not so wide, average. The left foot's toed out a little more than the right. Got the ball up in his stance right off the left heel pretty much. Looks like the ball's teed up about average height. And one thing about the stance, if we draw it from the heels, you're going to see how nice and centered this is. This is one of those classic looking golf swings. Great setup that anybody could emulate. The arms, they look a little bit like the Hogan book. He's got them, when Hogan drew the twine around the arms, indicating that they were tight to the body. But people make the mistake when they do that, when they set up with the elbows kind of locked up, in not creating any space in the takeaway under the right arm. And Hogan actually misled some people trying to get that right elbow and upper right arm to stay tight into the body. It's like you put a glove under there and keep it there. But if you watch Max, that's not the case. So you can see a nice separation on the right. You got nice width. So just an average takeaway, not an early set, but not hugely extended. As he gets up to P3, we're going to see almost 90 degrees of wrist cock. Now this is like I said, this is nicely filmed, so I can put the lines on it, so we can see where he's moving around. This swing is a couple of years old. Now that's about as limited rightward head movement as you'll see. It's almost none there. But there's also no cutting or sliding of the hips. So the hips are perfectly in the box. So probably one of the reasons that lack of right movement for the left arm appearing to be soft or a little bent, but a lot of people are just built like that, where the arm won't really straighten comfortably, so they leave it bent. But he's got real nice width. You can see both hands to the side of his head. Very important. The club never gets to parallel, just short of it. But beautiful turn. Now the other thing to note, look at the quiet feet. You hear a lot about big hip turns and lifting the left heel up like the old timers. This is not like that at all. This is pretty classic heel down. Take advantage of having a hyper athletic body. Doesn't really require a lot of give in the hips to get a turn out of this thing. So he cranks it up real nice. Now this is also very interesting in the downswing. You will rarely see the head move forward of where it started with a driver. And you also don't see quite as much lateral. Now I will tell you, there is one guy who did this, and his name was Hogan, who had a huge amount of lateral movement, and he allowed his head to move forward with the transition. Now back in the old days, the golf clubs they were better off hitting bullets that rolled, but with that ball forward in his stance, you'll see Hogan's ball was probably back here somewhere. And Max is going to back his head up from about P5 and a half. He's going to move backwards. And by the time he gets to the ball, his head is going to be back where it started, perfect. And it's going to keep going back a little bit, so he ends up back here. Now, one of the things to really note here is the drive of the glutes, especially that right one's going to push into the left real hard and squeeze. It's going to drag that foot, and this is something to look for. To get that right foot looking very active and dragged, while the left leg right at impact is going to snap. So this snapping, I mean, Max, if you watch him swing, it's very smooth. So the takeaway that he uses, I'll show you a little bit on the down the line view. It's kind of like if I was teaching a takeaway to be a little more deliberate for somebody who makes mistakes and snatches it. I would actually take a 2x4, a little piece of one, and put it behind the club and have him push it back, just to give it a little resistance and activate these core muscles in here, the obliques and all the muscles surrounding the spine. Because it's really not a shoulder turn, it's a trunk movement. The shoulders sit on top of the trunk. So if you think about it as a revolving around your spine, like rotate the muscles around the spine instead of the shoulder turn, you tend to engage all the muscles in that area between the waist and just below the shoulder. And then a really aggressive drive, and then watch the push. So if you watch my stuff, you probably heard me talk about the furthest left point of the hips, which usually happens somewhere around P5 and a half down here. And what we're looking for is for the belt buckle to end up right up against that furthest left line. Well, Max just goes right through that. Huge amount of push. Now you might think, well, isn't this what hurt Zalatoris's back? But watch him let his head go all the way past where it started fully. So we're going to get, the lower back. There's no way to swing a golf club without having an effect on your back. But when you get forward like this with the waist, most of that bend is in the upper thoracic. It's not down in the lower spine. So there's nothing about a golf swing that a doctor would ever prescribe for a bad back. So another thing to look for here is just, we'll see it from down the line. He's got a neutral takeaway where the face doesn't rotate much, but he's got a ton of rotation from about P2 or just before P2 up to 4. And just a great impact. So let's go. This is a nice shot from behind. So this is on that tough par 3 at Torrey. Now, interestingly enough, the pin is all the way on the left side of the green. You can see he's pretty much aiming at it, but watch the shot. Now, you got to have some serious confidence in your swing to start it left of that green over there. There's nothing but trouble, and a short side pin. He just cut it right in, right at the pin. So let's take a look at this, because this is angled just perfect. Make it a little bigger. So this is nice because we can draw all the lines here. The camera's a little high, obviously, but we can get most of what we like to see. So there's the neutral takeaway. You can see there's really no lowering. So he's not adding flex, he's not adding flexion, he's just sort of maintaining. And the face, probably around here, is somewhere in that neighborhood. But you can see it by the time it gets up here, it's back this way. So if you think about the amount of rotation from the takeaway as he approaches the top, look how he opens the face. Now this is the key. If you're trying to stop crossing the line, rotating the forearms in order to keep the right arm, you got to stop the elbow and keep the right arm in front. So you got to produce that feeling of external rotation where the right shoulder pushes forward. And then starting forward, so when that right arm stops and the club lays over, it's almost like he's flipping it over his shoulder and pointing it to the left at the top. Pretty much a perfectly flat left wrist. And remember how neutral and nice that grip was. So that's going to produce a real nice square club face. And then when we watch, now this is, remember, he's fading this ball, so it's not that much of a surprise to have it look like the hands come right out at the ball, but all his swings do that. I love this hand path. It's right at the ball, and the right arm is doing nothing but driving or adducting, to use that term, down and forward, with the club just shallowing just enough. Now watch how nice that is. Look at that impact. He's covering that shaft line. And look at the depth of the hips. So you can see that proper right foot action is to have it roll onto the instep, onto the inside edge of the ball of the foot while the hips are driving this way. So he's got that nice ground force movement. He's got the glutes really driving. Club's staying on plane. Perfect balance. It just looks like he's not trying that hard. So here's that shot he hit on 18. So if you think, now his shot is a cut, and look at this shot. He just gets up and from 240 over the water and just fires a draw in there. Hit it right next to the pin over the back of the green and just made an easy birdie. Let's get one more swing. Here's a nice little wedge swing. So tempo wise, when you watch this, it's going to be fairly deliberate on the backswing. Again, it's like there's a little resistance in the first part of the takeaway right there. Now here you can get a little clearer picture of the face angle. And then he's going to turn it with the forearms, and that's going to push the right shoulder, keep the right arm forward. Now watch the right arm. It's going to drive back in front of him. Beautiful. Look at that. That's a great position. Can't do it much better than that. He keeps that up and doesn't get hurt, and he's going to be up there in the top 5. All right.